In this video, we are going to solve equations by factoring. So we're going to use the zero factor property, which means if we end up with some, if a and b are real numbers and a times b gets you to 0 or equals 0, then either the a has to equal 0 or the b has to equal 0. So if you're in my class and you have the handout, I have some hints for you for solving polynomial equations by factoring. First of all, you need to write it in standard form. That means that you're going to have one side is equal to 0. If it needs to be factored, you're going to need to factor it completely. Set each of the factors containing a variable equal to 0. Solve those resulting equations from step 3, and then check your solutions back into the original equation, because sometimes you'll have erroneous errors. All right. So we are looking at solving. So here's our first example. If we are given x plus 2 times x minus 6 equals to 0, it's already factored, so that's nice. So we are then going to take each part and set it equal to 0. Finish the solving on each part. We get x is equal to negative 2. Add our 6 over, we get x is equal to positive 6. So in order for this to be 0, this equation, we know that x is either equal to negative 2, sorry, I lost my words there, or x would be equal to 6. That would be able to make that equal to 0. Now, when it comes time for the exam, you have to show me these steps. You can't just jump from here to here. I've got to see the x plus 2 equals to 0 and then the x equals negative 2. Don't just go from and skip this set. You will lose points for that. So make sure you show me some work. All right, let's do another example just like it. We have x plus 8 times x minus 5 equal to 0. We'll do the same steps here. We'll take x plus 8 equal to 0 and x minus 5 equal to 0. Subtracting our 8, we get x equal to negative 8. Adding the 5, we get x is equal to 5. So those would be our two answers. All right, let's do another example. Go do example 3. So if we're giving x times 5x minus 7 is equal to negative 2. Well, it's not equal to 0, so that's a problem right there. So let's add our 2 over. And we end up with x times 5x minus 7 plus 2 equals 0. Now the problem here is that if we didn't have the plus 2, we could set each of those equal to 0. But because we have that plus 2, we can't just set each part equal to 0 because there's that plus 2 hanging about. So what we're going to have to do is distribute this. So 5x times x would get us 5x squared. X times negative 7 is negative 7x. We still have the plus 2 is equal to 0. Okay, so this is where we're going to use our AC method. So we are looking at A times C getting us to B. So our A is 5 times our C is 2. That gets us 10, trying to get to negative 7. If we start with 1 and 10, they have to be negative because we have a negative over here. These need to be negative, and they both have to be negative in order to get a positive when we multiply. So negative 1 times negative 10 is positive 10. When I add them, I get negative 11. Not the right number, but we got the signs figured out, and that's important. So then negative 2 times negative 5 gets me positive 10, and when I add them, I get to negative 7, which is the number we're looking for. So if you recall, we will rewrite that negative 7x as negative 2x and negative 5x. So we still have our 5x squared minus 2x minus 5x plus 2 is equal to 0. So it's just like we factored before. We're going to continue to put our equal to 0 at the end. So on the first half, we can factor out an x, and we get left with 5x minus 2. Bring down our sign. Over here, the only thing that is in common is a 1, and negative 5x divided by negative 1 will get us positive 5x. Positive 2 divided by negative 1 will get us a negative 2. We know we did it correct because we have the same numbers or term in our parentheses. So now that becomes our greatest common factor. And then we'll group together what we have left because we factored out that. We just have the x left. When we factored that out, we have the negative 1. Now remember, still equal to 0. So now I'll do what I did up there on the previous problem and set each part equal to 0. Add my 2 over. I get 5x is equal to 2. Divide by 5, I get x equals to 2/5. Over here, I'll add my 1 over and get x is equal to 1. Now, you can check to see if these actually work. You should always check it in the original equation. So let's do a little bit of a check over here. We can see if the answers we get actually work. So remember, we have x times 5x minus 7 equal to negative 2 is the original equation. Let's do the 1 first because that's a little bit easier. 1 times 5 times 1 minus 7 equals negative 2. Well, 1 times anything is just going to be whatever we get. So that 1 will not change anything. Here we have 5 times 1, that'll be 5, minus 7. Does it equal negative 2? Well, 5 minus 7 is negative 2 equals negative 2. So that worked. Let's try the 2/5. So we'll have 2/5 times 5 times 2/5 minus 7. We want to know if it equals negative 2. Well, 5 times 2/5, because that's 5 over 1, the 5s will cancel and leave us with 2. So we have 2/5 times 2 minus 7, wanting to know if it equals negative 2. Well, 2 minus 7 is still going to get us a negative 5. And so this is negative 5 over 1. The 5s will cancel. We'll end up with negative 2 over 1, which is negative 2. So the answers both worked. So you don't have to check that every time, but if you're working on a problem and you're like, I don't even know if these are the right answers, you can, or if you're typing it in wrong or something in your homework, or you're just trying to figure out which one, something's funky, you can plug it back into your original equation. Not the one that you did all this work on. It has to go back to the original because you might have done your error up in here. All right, so let's go look at another equation. Let's look at example 4. So on example 4, we have 3 times x squared plus 4 plus 5 is equal to negative 6 times x squared plus 2x plus 13. So we have a little bit of distribution we have to do here. So 3 times x squared will get us 3x squared. 3 times 4 is plus 12 plus our 5. Negative 6x squared, negative 6 times 2x will get us negative 12x plus our 13. Now we need to decide where we're going to move our terms. Remember, it has to be set equal to 0. I'm going to move them all over here because I want positive x squareds because I'm going to have to factor again. So I'm going to do all of this at one time. I'm going to move everybody opposite signs over to the other side. So 6x squared plus 12x minus 13. So over here we end up with 9x squared plus, plus 12x. I should have simplified up here, so sorry. Plus 12x. I was thinking this had an x in the middle. This 12 and 5 we should have simplified first before we moved everything over. And that would get us 17. So I did not do that. Sorry about that. I was thinking there was an x there, and there is not. So we have 12 plus 5 is 17 minus 13 is going to leave us with a 4. It's okay that we didn't, but you always should simplify first before you bring it over. And then this all canceled, so we have 0 on this side. So now we're back to our AC method. So A times C getting us to B. So we've got 9 times 4, which is 36, getting us to 12. So they're all positive, so we don't have to worry about the signs this time. That gives us 1 times 36 is 36. When I add them, I get to 37. 2 times 18 is 36. When I add them, I get to 20. 3 times 12 is 36. When I add them, I get to 15, so we're getting closer. 4 times 9 is 36. When I add, I get to 13. 5 won't go in there. 6 does. 6 times 6 is 36. When I add them, I get to 12. All right, so now what we're going to do is rewrite our 12x with our 2 6's. So we will have 9x squared plus 6x plus 6x plus 4 equal to 0. Again, split it in half. Over here we can factor out a 3x. 9x squared divided by 3x will leave us with 3x. 6x divided by 3x will leave us with a 2. Bring down our positive sign. Between a 6x and a 4, I can factor out 2, and I'm left with 3x plus 2. Our parentheses match, so we know we did it correctly. Factor out that parentheses, the greatest common factor, and we're left with 3x on this side, and over here a plus 2. Now notice that we have the exact same answer for our problem, and that's okay. But when we go to set it equal to 0, we only have to set one of them equal to 0 because they're exactly the same in the parentheses. So we'll subtract our 2 over and get 3x is equal to negative 2. Divide by 3, and x is equal to negative 2/3. Now you could go back and check that into your problem if you want, or if you are unsure if you got the right answer. All right, let's go on to a next example. So example 5, we have x cubed is equal to 4x. Again, everything has to be set equal to 0 in order to solve them. So I'm going to move my 4x over and get x cubed minus 4x is equal to 0. So we're going to factor out our x and get x squared minus 4, because you always have to look for those greatest common factors. Now this x squared minus 4, we learned this in the last section, this is the difference of squares. So we know that x is going to stick. We're going to have 2 sets of parentheses with a minus and a plus. The square root of x squared will get us x, and the square root of 4 is 2. Now this time we have 3 terms. So we have to set the x equal to 0, the x minus 2 equal to 0, and the x plus 2 equal to 0. So this one's already solved. We'll add the 2 over and get x equal to 2. Subtract the 2, and we get x equals negative 2. So this one actually has 3 answers. We've got 1 here, 1 here, and 1 there. So there's 3 answers for that one, which makes sense because we have an x cubed. All right, let's do one that's similar to that. So we have example 6 is going to get us y cubed is equal to 81y. If you want, you can try this one on your own and then come back. Stop the video, see if you can work it out, and then come back to it. All right, so if you're coming back, we're going to move that 81y over. So y cubed minus 81y is equal to 0. Again, they have a common factor similar to this one. We have a y times y squared minus 81 is equal to 0. Again, this is the difference of 2 perfect squares. So that'll get us the sets of parentheses with the minus and the plus, or the plus and the minus. It really doesn't matter. The square root of y squared is going to get us y. Square root of 81 is 9. So that'll get us y is equal to 0, y minus 9 equals 0, and y plus 9 equals 0. Again, this one's already finished. We'll add the 9 over and get y is equal to 9. Subtract the 9 over, y is equal to negative 9. So again, we had 3 answers on this one. All right, so let's go look at some other problems. So example 7, we have 7x squared minus x, is equal to negative x. Equal signs do matter. So again, everything has to be set equal to 0, so I'm going to add x over and get 7x squared plus x is equal to 0. Now here, I don't have a number term at the end, but I do have, so don't need to do the AC method because we have a common factor here of x. So x factored out will get us 7x plus 1. And now we'll just take each part and set it equal to 0. So x is equal to 0 and 7x plus 1 equals 0. So this part is done. This one we're going to move our 1 over and get 7x is equal to negative 1. Divide by 7, so x is equal to negative 1 over 7. So this would be our second answer. All right. Example 9. Let's see if that's the one that's on here. So let's look at example 8. If we have negative 16 of t squared plus 6,400 is equal to 0. We're going to look to see what we can factor out between these two numbers. They're really big. It is not the difference of squares at this point. It is, and it would be very hard to factor because of the negative sign in the front. So I'm going to factor out a negative 16. That's what they have in common. That'll leave me with a t squared that's positive. This now becomes a negative, and this would be 400. Because 6,400 divided by negative 16 would get you negative 400. Now, that negative 16 doesn't have any play in what we're doing. We could divide both sides by that, and you can do that if you want to, or you can just ignore it because it doesn't have a variable on it. If I divide both sides by that, I still end up with t squared minus 400 is equal to 0. And that's where it won't have any play. So if you don't do that part and because you're just looking to solve for the variable, you can go to the spot here. Now this is the difference of squares. So we'll have t and t, minus and a plus. The square root of 400 will get us 20. So our answers would be t minus 20 equals 0 and t plus 20 equals 0. Adding the 20 over, we get t is equal to 20. Subtracting the 20 on this side, we get t is equal to negative 20. So those would be our two answers. All right, let's look at another example. So if we had x squared minus 36 times 8x plus 7 is equal to 0. Well, this one is good. This is already factored, but this one is not. X squared minus 36, that's the difference of squares. So this part we're going to factor. You don't want to multiply that all out. So pay attention to what's going on in your problem before you just start multiplying everything, because then you'd have to go back and factor it out. So x squared minus 36 is going to factor to be x minus 6, x plus 6. We still have the 8x plus 7 equal to 0. Set each part equal to 0. So we end up with adding our 6 over, we get x equal to 6. Subtracting our 6, we get x equals negative 6. Subtract the 7, we get 8x equals negative 7. Divide by 8, and x will equal negative 7 over 8. So recognize those differences of squares when you see them. It can make life a little bit easier. So on this one, we have 3 answers again. All right, let's look at number 10. Here we have x squared over 2 plus x over 20 is equal to 1 over 10. Now for this one, what we want to do is get rid of our denominator. So what would a common denominator be here? Well, our biggest number is 20. 20 does divide by 10, and it divides by 2. So let's multiply both sides, or all 3 terms, by 20. I like to put 1 at each term so I can do some canceling. 2 goes into 20 10 times, so I'll have 10x squared. 20 goes into 20 1 time, so 1 times x will just get me x. 10 goes into 20 2 times. 2 times 1 is going to get us 2. Now we have something we can work with. So I'll subtract the 2 and move it over because everything has to be on one side because it needs to be equal to 0. And now we're back to the AC method. So we have A times C trying to get us to B. So we have 10 times negative 2, and we want to get to a 1. So that's negative 20, trying to get to 1. So if I start with 1 and 20, my negative has to go on the 1. So I get negative 1 times 20 is negative 20. When I add them, I get positive 19. I need my bigger number to be positive this time because I have a positive B. Negative 2 times 10 is negative 20. When I add those, I get 8. 3 does not go in there, 4 does. Negative 4 times 5 is negative 20. When I add them, I get 1, which is the number I'm looking for. So I will come up here and rewrite my 1x as negative 4x and 5x. So 10x squared minus 4x plus 5x minus 2 is equal to 0. We'll split it in line, or split it in half, using a line. Over here, we can factor out a 2x, and we are left with 5x minus 2. Bring down our plus sign. Between 5x and 2, we can only factor out a 1, and we're still left with our 5x minus 2. These match, so we did it correctly. We'll factor that out as our greatest common factor. And then we're left with a 2x and a 1. Now we'll take each part and set it equal to 0. We'll add the 2 over and get 5x is equal to 2. Divide by 5, x will equal 2/5. Subtract our 1, we get 2x is equal to negative 1. Divide by 2, x is equal to negative 1/2. So those would be our two answers. All right, the next problem we're going to look at is a word problem. And we're going to use the skills that we've covered in here to solve this. So after t seconds, the height of ht of a model rocket launched from the ground into the air is given by this function. Find how long it takes the rocket to reach a height of 96 feet. So we are looking to see how long it'll take to reach 96. Alrighty, so remember, distance cannot be negative and the height at the ground is 0. So after t seconds, we're looking at that. This is our equation. We're looking to see how long it takes to get to 96 feet. All right. New paper. So we're starting out with the height of t is equal to negative 16t squared plus 80t. But we want to know not the height at the ground, or when it hits the ground. We're looking at what the height, how long does it take? We're looking to solve for t. How long does it take to, because the height of the ground would be 0, to reach a height of 96? So when the height is 96, we're looking for our t. So I need to figure out where I'm going to put things. Am I going to move these to this side or that to that side? I always want a positive number for my t, so I'm going to go ahead and move everybody over to this side. So I'm going to add the 16t squared and subtract the 80t from both sides. So now I have 16t squared minus 80t plus 96 is equal to 0. Because in order to solve it, I still have to get to 0. But that 96 is the height that we're at. All right, now between these three terms, they're all factorable by 16. That's our GCF, is 16. And that'll leave us with t squared minus 5t plus 6 is equal to 0. Well, that's a much more manageable equation. Now remember, we can divide both sides by that 16, and that way we're just left with our term. Now we need to factor this using our AC method. So again, we have our A times our C getting us to B. So t squared, that tells us we have a 1 for the A, we have a 6 for the C, and we have a negative 5 for the B. So 1 times 6 is 6, trying to get to negative 5. So we've got, if we start with 1 and 6, because this is a negative and this is positive, both of these will have to be negative. So when we multiply, we get a positive 6. When we add, we get negative 7. Not the right number, but it is the right sign. Negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6. When we add it, we get to negative 5. So that's the numbers we're looking for. We can come over and rewrite our negative 5t as negative 2t and negative 3t. And split it because they have factor by grouping. So t times t minus 2. Bring down our negative sign. We can factor out a 3. And we get t minus 2. They match. We have t minus 2 times t minus 3 is equal to 0. So t minus 2 equals 0. T minus 3 equals 0. Our t will equal to 2 when we add that over. And over here, let's add our 3 and get t is equal to 3. Now, you may be asking yourself, how do we get 2 times? Because a rocket goes up when we reach 96, that's it. But remember that with that rocket, what goes up must come down. So the rocket's going to start at this spot, is going to come up, and it's going to come back down. It's going to ascend and descend. So if we look at this spot, let's just say this is where it's 96. It's hitting here and here. This would be like at 2 seconds, and this would be at 3 seconds. And I know I don't have it evenly spaced. Whoops, you can't see that. Sorry. So where it goes up, it's also going to come back down. So you've got 2 seconds where it's hitting, and it's hitting at the 3rd second as well. I don't have the graph drawn like beautifully to make the spacing even on the seconds, but it's just to give you an idea that it will hit that 96 foot at 2 points of time because as it goes up and then as it comes down. So those would be your 2 answers for that problem.